Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for the GNSI's virtual conference. We are in session 3. This is our last presentation for the section on adaptive practices for visual creatives. And we're joined by Cordelia Norris. She's the founder of Luna Creative, an award-winning studio that works with values-driven organizations. She is here to talk to us today about how she uses her skills as a creative and an entrepreneur to generate work for herself and benefit causes that she cares about. Cordelia, thank you for joining us. We're delighted that you're here, and we can't wait to hear what you have to share.
Oh, thank you so much, Kathy, and thank you to everyone for the GNS Conference Committee. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. So I'm coming to you from Wilmington, North Carolina. So I'm speaking to you basically between hurricanes. So I will try to keep this moving right along. And I really appreciate you joining today and appreciate the conference committee and everyone who worked so hard to put this together. So I'll be speaking about artist activism and creating projects that help drive change. So as Kathy mentioned, I'm a creative who focuses on protecting and celebrating the natural world through art, design, and activism. I just celebrated the 10th anniversary of my design and illustration studio, Luna Creative. And I want to start off just by sharing a few creative collaborations specifically in the conservation space that have made a big difference. And then I'll walk you through a creative collaboration that I've done with some other GNSI members. So this is the work of Rob Perkins. He's a DJ, he's a composer, and he's a producer. And he goes by the name El Bujo, or the Owl. He has produced 2 albums of electronic music in collaboration with other DJs and composers internationally to highlight endangered or threatened bird species. The first one is a guide to birdsong of South America, and then second one that just came out and was just featured on NPR is a guide to birdsong of Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. It's an extraordinary collaboration, and proceeds from sales are going to various conservation organizations like Birds Caribbean. And his vision with these projects is to also help to create sustainable ecotourism around birding. So the next project I wanted to share with you, just to set the stage, is this is a gorgeous collaborative project featuring work by some GNSI members, Silent Skies. It's an international mosaic featuring all of the 678 endangered species of birds worldwide. 160 artists worked on this, members of the group Artists for Conservation, AFC. There were artists from 15 different countries, and they created, this is just a small piece of it, they created a 100-foot installation. This formed the centerpiece of the 27th International Ornithological Congress in 2018 in Vancouver, BC, and it's toured internationally. And finally, a great example that, these collaborations can take very different forms and they can be structured very differently. There's an Oregon-based artist who I first saw at the National Zoo in 2016, Angela Hazelton Pazzi, and she is on the Oregon coast. And she said, I went to the ocean for healing, and I realized that the ocean needed to be healed. And she was very concerned about the amount of marine debris that she saw inundating the Oregon coast. And she started a nonprofit called Wash the Shore, in which she does regular coastal cleanup. She works with teams of volunteers and people. And so they collect debris. She makes these amazing, larger-than-life sculptures from them. And she is using all just debris that has been found to highlight species that are endangered by this very same debris. So it's a great example of collaboration. She's involving the community and doing a great deal of education. And she said that basically until we run out of plastic on the beach, we will keep doing our work. In this case, I thought forming a nonprofit allows this to be more sustainable and more of a long-term effort, and makes it easier to get funding and grants. So there are always there's just always an abundance of good causes that could benefit from your talents, from your and from your specialized knowledge. But artistic activism is particularly resonant in this moment when we're facing so many different serious challenges. So what I wanted to do is to share how I developed the Coloring Nature series of activity books to support a few causes that are near and dear to my heart, and what I've learned. And so hopefully some of these pointers can translate to your future projects and save you some time and effort. So in the summer of 2018, this origin story here, in the summer of 2018, I was in the Atlanta airport and I was holding my then 10-month-old son, Jake, and we were watching the news. The administration had just announced its zero tolerance policy. This, of course, is Jake. He's adorable. He's with his dad. The administration had just announced its zero tolerance policy, which treated all migrants as illegal as a justification for removing children from their families at the southern border. We were at the Atlanta airport. This was getting wall-to-wall coverage. It was shocking. As a parent, the thought of having Jake taken from my arms with no idea where he's going or for how long was absolutely devastating. And so as American citizens, we were burdened by knowledge. We were seeing the images, we were hearing audio of children crying, but we weren't able to bear witness directly, and we really couldn't intervene. So in situations like this, when powerful forces are making sweeping changes out of sight, it's easy to feel powerless. It's easy to feel overwhelmed. And my first thought was, I'm not a bilingual human rights lawyer practicing in a border state. How can I help? But right there, right when I was in the airport holding my son, I had an idea. Previously, I'd illustrated a pelican family. There are two brown pelican parents watching their chick emerge from the shell. And this whimsical illustration I've created for my pregnancy announcement card. So I've been wanting to do something more with this illustration. Make it into a series about nesting birds. But the idea had always just sort of been out of reach. I would almost have the shape of it and then it would just sort of slip away. So now I think it was waiting for the right time. And then when I was at the airport with Jake, it struck, fully formed, and just hit like a lightning bolt. I would design a book, a collaborative educational book about nesting birds and their young, to raise funds to help migrant kids suffering through the ordeal of detention. I knew it would be a big project, but I also knew that I could get some help. And so the idea for Hatchlings was born. Authored by Susan Matheson, I was a GNSI member, edited by my husband, Joseph Kadat. This activity book showcases nesting birds and their young. It's designed to speak to the beauty and sanctity of family. And it's also a fundraiser for the Young Center, which is a leading nonprofit that specializes in providing social and legal services for migrant children. These are the bilingual human rights lawyers that I was wishing I was earlier. So as soon as I got home, I went to work. I have a background in book design. My husband's an editor. He has a publishing collective that he runs. So we have some insight and background into the self-publishing process, which can be complicated. And we were working with Ingram, which is, or you also hear it called Ingram Spark. They're a well-established book printer and distributor in Nashville. So Once we nailed down the format and got through the initial setup for the book, I put out the call for illustrators through GNSI, of course, and the illustration department at SCAD, where I went to school, and in social media groups. And that brings us to tip 1. When you're working on a big, hairy project like this, if you have a passion project, you don't have to go it alone. You can tap into your network, you find collaborators, get feedback and advice. And also your network can help get the word out about your projects. So as we go, I'm going to share some slides or some images from both books, kind of going back and forth. So I'll be sharing work. I'll be sharing spreads from all along the Atlantic and alternating that with the first book, Hatchlings. So as a new project and working with many of the contributors for the first time, I spent some time thinking about how to explain the project. And then once we started to come together as a group, we defined the scope and then decide collectively that we were going to focus on nesting birds of North America. Which brings me to my second point, which is having an elevator pitch for the project really helped. Write it down, keep it handy, run through it with people who aren't familiar with what you're doing. So make sure it makes sense. It's not too inside baseball. And then you can refine it as you go and use variations of it for your social media and for marketing, press outreach, online sales, whatever you need. So our group came together quickly. It turns out that a number of illustrators were distressed by the administration's family separation policy and just the haunting images that we were seeing of kids in cages, kids sleeping under solar blankets, children crying. So the talent that was drawn to this project and the energy of the group was just amazing. And it really kept me going throughout. So we used a private Facebook group, email, and Google Drive to communicate. The Facebook group I found particularly important for fostering culture because it's open, it's friendly, it's fairly transparent. We solicited input through the Facebook group using polls and discussions. And then we also used email and Google Drive. The emails were a little more unruly to manage. So if you are collaborating, deciding on the best tools to communicate in advance with an understanding of your coworkers and how they work is so important. Like you might really like Trello or Slack, but somebody else might not. So kind of finding that good middle ground is very helpful. So, and also, if you, I should mention, if you're interested in joining the Facebook group, just search for Coloring Nature as a Facebook group, and then ask to join. I'll be happy to admit you, and that way you can keep up to date on future projects. So to help avoid overlap and to have a good range of representation of species, in the book, we made a sort of a master list. And then illustrators could claim, they could either suggest or claim a species. And this is the Facebook group that I mentioned. And this has been really our central point of connection communication. So as submissions started coming in, and I was planning out the book, I researched other nature-themed activity books, especially ones about birds. They're a wide variety. Not surprisingly, the one that I liked the most came from Cornell Labs. Which brings us to lesson number 4. Research the relevant projects, see what else is out there for interesting ideas, and just also to make sure that what you're doing is sufficiently unique. Typically it will be, but it's always a good idea to have a basic understanding of where the market is currently. So as a group, we also decided which nonprofit we want to support. I selected 3 based on research that I did, and then presented to the group, and we voted using a Facebook poll. And, at the time, I thought it made sense to wait until the book was published to approach our chosen nonprofit with the finished product. They'll love it, I thought. And now I know it's important to get buy-in early in the process and seek out the best organization to collaborate with. And this was the single most important lesson I learned in the process. So if you want to collaborate, or if you want to partner with a nonprofit and create something that's a benefit to the nonprofit, raises funds for them, we want to reach out early and start the conversation right away. Some organizations have the bandwidth and they're just delighted to partner on new ventures, and other organizations are understaffed or overwhelmed and just keeping up with their core mission, and they might not have the bandwidth for something extra. So the Young Center did help promote Hatchlings. They posted about it on social media, but I did have to follow up with them a few times. They were understandably overwhelmed with the humanitarian crisis at the southern border. And they were also, just unfortunately, they were between social media marketing staff, which meant that they just had that crucial piece understaffed, and so no one was really managing that aspect. So going forward, I've added the criteria of easy to work with to the list of considerations when evaluating the partnership potential of a nonprofit. And now I reach out in advance to start the conversation, to gauge the level of interest, and just, if they have the bandwidth to work together on this. So not surprisingly, we received a number of amazing submissions. I curated those with an eye towards draftsmanship, composition, species variety, and line quality. So it was important to me that, and I think just important principle in general, that everyone included in the book was compensated for their work and continued to have rights to the work. So we wrote up a simple contract to have in place with the contributors. And if you're interested in seeing that, just let me know and I can send that to you. We also paid $25 per accepted submission upon publication. The front and back cover illustrators received $150 to $250, depending on complexity, for the back and front cover illustrations, which were also included in the book. And then once we had a sense of the number of pages, we could also get a rough idea of the pricing per book, wholesale and retail. That brings me to my 6th point. For more in-depth projects, get a handle on the business model early on to determine your break-even point. For me personally, for this project, both books cost about $1,500 each out of pocket to produce. There is a profit margin of approximately $5 per book when sold in stores or sold online, and about $1 profit margin for wholesale sales. And of course, we're not doing these projects to get rich. That's not the goal, but it's always good to know what your break-even point is if you are investing funds and if you're creating something that will go to market. So at this point, we had the illustrations and we had the basic structure of the book in place. And now what we needed was the accompanying text. And at this point, I knew I was in over my head. I read about the species that were being included, but I really didn't know enough to credibly write about them for publication. And at the time, I wasn't a birder. I didn't own a field guide. I had a vague idea of, taxonomic order. So, and here's where another note of grace came in. Another GNSI member in Canada, Suzanne Matheson, who was a contributor along with her daughter to the book, she offered to write the entries that accompany each of the illustrations. So as we know, as birders, I am now a birder, and bird lovers, there's a lot to talk about with any given bird species. So we define the scope of the entries and their overall length, and created a template that would help make the entries easier to write to, using a typical field guide structure. Suzanne authored the entries for a significantly reduced rate of about $200, and she contributed, I think, about 20 hours of her time. My husband, the editor, further refined the entries and looking at grammar, tense, and the like. I made a final pass, and then we all reviewed the revised entries and decided that we were happy ultimately with the result. And that leads to point 7, which is don't try to be an army of one. If you can work to your strengths, work to your core strengths, and then bring in people who have similar interests, but have diverse points of view, different backgrounds, you're going to create an amazing, and really something that is truly, it's going to elevate your project rather than you trying to do everything yourself. And it's going to create an amazing end result. So we started, for our timeline, we started the project in late June, early July of 2018. We published that year in mid-December, so it's pretty quick, just in advance of the holidays. It took a little over 5 months. And that fast pace from concept to published product really shows the power of collaboration. If I was trying to do this myself, I think I'd still be working on it. And then our second book, All Along the Atlantic, took about the same amount of time. It's a little longer book. I was lucky also again to find a co-author while I was in the process of creating it. And this leads to pointer 8, which I know everyone in here as a working professional knows, but always helps to say, plan in advance, create milestones. So chunk it out and give yourself smaller goals along the way to make it more doable, and give yourself enough time. So throughout the process, I was thinking about what marketing materials we'd need, and the design of the book really guided the look and feel of the print and digital collateral that we created for marketing, and it helped keep everything very cohesive. So we started with postcards. I designed postcards to have at point of sale locations and as leave behinds. We also had customized, let's see here, we had customized postcards for individual illustrators, which was really helpful. I would update, they had an event coming up or something, or they were selling the books at retail locations. I would create custom collateral for them. They could either print it off or have it on iPad for an event. And this really gave them like a marketing kit. For social media, for Facebook and Instagram, I created graphics for us all to share on our social media feeds. And then having this ready in advance of the rollout was really helpful. We were able to do some pre-promotion and allowed us to sort of hit the ground running. And we kept it simple. Ingram, the printer, distributes to Amazon, the big box stores, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and the like. So we did not create a site for the books yet, but we might in the future as we have more. And then as part of the marketing, final piece was that I sent out a press release to very select members of the media who might cover this sort of thing. We did get a blurb about it in a local paper, which was great. So that leads me to the second to last point. Have a plan in place for your promotion, because you can have an amazing idea, but you just have a path to market, understand how you're going to talk about it, and having that marketing piece in place for both yourself, for the project itself and for the collaborators is very powerful. So these have both been really, Hatchlings and the second book, All Along the Atlantic, have both been really special projects. They've been meaningful. They've been a lot of fun to develop. And They both just did very special projects to me. So prior to the pandemic, we sold the book at about 6 locations locally here in Wilmington. We were starting to do outreach to Raleigh and other locales, and it was really gaining momentum. Contributors would order copies at wholesale, and then they could sell them online or sell them at events or retail stores. So that model helped us increase our reach, and we were able to reach readers across the country and a little bit internationally too. And then Ingram would distribute the book to major online retailers. So the biggest challenge right now has been the pandemic. That has made marketing and outreach trickier. Some of our retailers are just still closed. Some of them are open more limited hours. So my plan, what I'm thinking going forward, is to boost sales by finding a distributor. I think we're at that point. And then I'd like to get into more stores that have multiple locations. Or we could white label the books at gift shops for aquariums, zoos, and the like. And that brings me to a final point. As always, any big project, you got to celebrate your wins. You learn from your failures or your mistakes, and then just document, and so that you have a working guide for the future. So I'm looking forward to publishing more books in the series. And the next book will feature pollinators, from birds, bees, and moths from bees and butterflies and moths to birds and bats. And we're envisioning for this next book more interactive elements, like how to build a bat box, and hands-on activities that you can do to help pollinators. So today at the conference, I'm putting out a call for entries, and with an eye to publishing in the spring of 2021. And you can, of course, contact me for more details right here. I'm not hard to find. I'm pretty good about answering email normally. And these books are a lot of fun to work on because we have a number of collaborators, typically about 20 to 25 people on a book. It's a fairly light lift. And we've been able to attract some amazing contributors. So thank you. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Thank you to the GNSI committee, which has done an amazing job of bringing us all together. And thank you to everyone who's contributed to both books. And with that, let me stop sharing my screen and answer any questions.
Thank you, Cordelia. I will pull up Sarah right now, and she can run the question and answer. That was really inspiring. I think you're going to get a lot of entries for this next book.
Thank you. Okay, let me look at the question.
Comes.
Okay.
So, yeah, and Cordelia, I can just ask you. So
sure.
You don't have to answer them, or you don't have to read and think. So one of the questions is asking you how you manage to wrangle different artist styles into kind of a cohesive look or a, complementary.
Well, one of the things I thought was really cool, because there are about 8 billion activity books on the market, is that there are very few anthologies. So I love the idea, and I didn't really emphasize, being an anthology, there are different styles. And so what I'm looking for is a similar level of quality. That was the metric, because I thought the fact that having diverse styles, let me see if I can pull up one. Having these diverse range of styles was really, I thought, made it more interesting than your traditional coloring book, which is typically one artist throughout, and it can start to feel very same.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't, I wanted diversity. Like, this is,
okay.
Yeah, that was important.
Okay, I like that. Yeah. All right. So, did you get funding to print the books ahead of time, or did partial sales of the books pay for printing, or just give a little more background in that? And the answer may be a little different per project, but.
Sure. They are both self-funded, and I just basically kept track of what the initial investment was. And then the primary investment, of course, was we're contributing our time. So I'm not counting that, but the primary investment was making sure that everyone who was published was paid.
Yeah.
So
that's
that,
wonderful.
and it, yeah, so I just kept track of it. And I will add, I think $25 is shockingly low, but we just want to have an acknowledgement of that work.
Okay, thank you. So this is a practical question from somebody, or a curiosity question. They're just wondering, for the online book customers, are they actually painting it online, or are they printing it out? So people are curious.
Oh, I made it. Right now it's a hard copy book only, so it's not an ebook. Yes,
Okay.
it could be an ebook, but I really thought that there's significant with an activity book. It really benefits from being one piece.
Sure, that makes sense. So
and having a curated experience.
Okay, so that might have been a misunderstanding of, yeah. So there are several questions that I think might be best answered specifically by you privately in the Ask a Question section of this session that we're in right now.
Sure.
And so, but you can go back and do that after we're no longer live. And I think, Cappy, I think we're kind of wrapping it up, unless, Cordelia, there's just that one last point that has occurred to you that you'd like to share. People are curious. Just give us a brief on that. Yeah.
Yes. And so it's going to focus on pollinators. And I did see a question that I thought I would answer right now. Facebook is not the only way to participate. It's just, and we can look at another option like Slack. I just found Facebook as a great combination of rich media where I can share videos and we can share images quickly, and we can do polling. So I was leaning heavily on Facebook. That doesn't mean we have to use that going forward, but I think I would continue to use it and maybe incorporate one other thing.
And you made the good point in your talk that to when you're working with collaborators to kind of find a platform that's a compromise, that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have contributors,
like not your choice or somebody else's, but yeah.
Yeah, I have. There are contributors to this book who are not on Facebook, so it's not essential. We have email and we have Google Drive and we have a lot of other tools that are disposal. So it's not a prerequisite.
Yeah, I've worked with working groups who use Slack, for example. So I mean, there are a lot of different ways, a lot of different platforms. So
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this.
Thank you, guys.
I think that your talk, as with the others, is just bringing an element or bringing a conversation or at least something into the dialogue that people needed to hear and wanted to hear and are curious about. So thank you so much for bringing this to us.
Okay, well, thank you, guys. I'm looking forward to the event tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it, Cordelia. You will have a wealth of questions, I think, down there, if you don't mind just answering in the comments.
Sure.
Thank you, everyone else, for joining us. I just have a few closing words, so I'll pop Cordelia and you, Sarah, off screen so you don't have to say it awkwardly.
Okay.
All right. So I hope that this segment of our conference has shed light on some of the alternatives that may be available to you if you have the bandwidth and the desire to think creatively about where you're headed and what options are available to people with our skill sets. I think it's interesting that two presenters specifically mentioned the helplessness that they felt in the face of current events. First, Jennifer Fairman noted how she felt in the face of 9/11 attacks, and then Cordelia just now mentioning how she was deeply impacted and spurred to action when she learned of the migrant children crisis more recently. It's enormously valuable to see how they both channeled their feelings of distress into real concrete action that contributes to our society. Increasingly, I think that we have the ability and the opportunity to take control of our career trajectories by developing projects that are a little outside the box. I hope this session leaves you feeling empowered to make an impact on the issues that you feel strongly about. And as you do so, remember that GNSI is here for you to foster connections, to provide resources, and to develop more programming catered to your interests. So please do get in touch with us. Keep us in the loop. The only way that we can continue to provide programming like this for you is if you let us know what's interesting and what's happening in your worlds. In the meantime, want to encourage everyone to get on our website and enjoy the juried exhibition that we have up there. The juried exhibition, for those of you who are not regularly a part of our conferences, if you're new to the organization, is a beloved event in our annual conference. And of course, this year we were forced to do it online. So I want to thank Nancy Hart and Amelia James, especially, for putting that together. They sifted through the entries and tirelessly worked to bring those entries to our jurors, who are also on our list that we'd like to thank. We have 4 jurors this year: Rogerio Lupo, Jason Downs, Erica Fielder, and Mark Mandica, all poured hours into sifting through the incredible submissions that we received, and we received hundreds of them. And then lastly, Andrew McAfee and Caitlin O'Connell. They were on the web team that actually made it possible for you to see the results of those exhibitions. And not only that, they've added access. Anyone in the world can see the incredible work that we do. So thank you so much to the entire exhibit team.